Welcome to the Lair of Secrets podcast, the podcast about gaming and being a geek by two 40-something geek dads. I'm David Moore, and I just finished a week-long staycation and got some projects done around the Lair.
And I'm Ken Newquist, and I'm a hiking, swimming, running, book-reading machine who really just needs a nap. So, staycation, eh?
Yeah, I just, it's a weird time to take it, but I just needed, I needed some time to get some things done around the house, and also just to kind of cleanse my head of some work stuff for a while. I was getting a little too stressful, and so I just wanted to take some time away and not get burned out, because I've gone through that before, and it's not a good place. We're going to switch things up a little bit for all our listeners out there. We're going to actually go back and forth, so it's not one of us talking for half an hour and then the next one talking for half an hour. We're going to actually pop back and forth with our topics. My first topic, however, I got to play for the last few weeks with a new printer. So I used to have, well, still do have a PrinterBot. I can't remember if it was the simpler PrinterBot Play. I have the simple, but that's much older. And it just was not a really big print area, and it broke. And, it was mostly one of those printers where I can go ahead and not have to, it was more like a toaster where it just kind of worked. And I didn't want to futz with it, etc. But I know, even though I know how, I just didn't want to spend hours and hours and hours. So I ordered the new Prusa i3 MK3S Plus, which is highly recommended. It's more expensive than your typical knockoff printer, but I also, again, I wanted a printer that just worked. I didn't want to spend hours playing around and tinkering with it. And so while it shipped, I ended up fixing the other one, of course. But
of course,
yeah. But once the new one got here, and I bought the kit version, I set it up. Oh my gosh, it is night and day. Like, you get what you pay for. The PrinterBot Play was inexpensive.
So what makes it so different?
So a couple of things make it different. It will, it's got a heated bed, so things stick to the bed a lot more easily. For the entire print, I've only had a couple things come unstuck. I don't need to have blue painter's tape to give it a sticky area. It comes with a magnet. It comes with a steel sheet with a particular coating on it that is magnetized to the main bed. So when it finishes and the bed cools down, you just pick the bed up and flex it a little bit if it's still stuck. Because when it cools down, sometimes it just pops off the bed immediately. So I don't need to use like a spatula or anything to like scrape it off the bed. And it just works. So it's a good, about 5-6 inches square, and then 5-6 inches of vertical height, which is, I was able to do that depth, like the Y direction depth on the old printer, but the X direction depth was half that. So I wasn't able to print a whole bunch of stuff that was larger. One of the things that I printed recently was someone had put together this D20, like this flattened two-dimensional sort of D20 wall art. And so I went whole hog on it. I printed all the pieces of it, painted them, mounted it on pretty thick polycarbonate, put fairy lights behind it, and then so now that's hanging up in the girls' game room. And it looks really cool. The girls love it. And I love this printer. It just works really well. Printed a couple of other things, like a pen holder for the pens that I've been, pens and pencils that I've been turning. and to kind of display them, the ones I haven't sold or given away. And I printed out this little DIY stream deck that I'd shown you before, but I had some extra mechanical key switches, and I had an Arduino knockoff and found a DIY stream deck sort of thing, and I printed out the case for it. It's really nice. I've also got the last thing I did, most recent thing I did was someone put a Fifth Element Multipass model that holds vaccination cards. And so I've printed out one so far for my wife, which is a larger. For some reason she has a larger one than the rest of the family, so I have to find the smaller version of that. So we'll have multi-pass holders for the vaccination cards if we ever need to cart them around and show them. So we can recreate the multi-pass scene from Fifth Element. So yeah. So I've been following you. Of course, we talk occasionally over the week, but I've also been seeing your posts on Twitter about your trail to Philmont. But so tell me more about it.
We're in the final stretch, which means that everybody gets to finally. I expect everyone will be excited to hear this. I'm gonna stop talking about Philmont soon. It's been like 2 years. I promise you, I'm gonna stop soon because we're gonna be there in 30 days, which seems just unbelievable because we're in the final stretch. This is it. We leave June 30th for Colorado, and then we're 2 days in Colorado, and then
cool.
we're in New Mexico where we're backpacking for 12 days. So we went on our final shakedown hike this past weekend, 17 miles over 2 days on the Appalachian Trail in New Jersey. And so we had done the same stretch of trail in April, and in April it was in the 50s and cold, and I consoled myself thinking, well, when we do this again in May, it's going to be a lot warmer. And so we went backpacking this weekend, and it was in the 40s and raining. So even colder, I think, than when we went in April. And it rained. Well, we got lucky on Saturday. It only rained for at the beginning it downpoured. But we didn't get started until after the downpour was done. And then we only had to hike through the rain for a relatively short period of time. On Sunday, it just steady rain, like light rain, but steady rain the whole 7 miles.
Hiking through the rain has always been miserable for me. And hopefully that when you're at Philmont, you don't have to do that.
That's the hope, right? And so the thing is, we do this thing called it's roses, buds, and thorns. And the idea is that after every day you talk about what worked, what didn't work, and what you can improve on, right? And so everybody else was kind of saying, oh, this is obviously a thorn. It rained. It was miserable. We were cold. I wouldn't say miserable. I mean, we were well prepared. So I think that's the thing. One of our Scoutmasters likes to say, there's no bad weather, only bad gear, right?
Right.
And so at this point,
I totally agree.
We have pretty good gear. So that was the good side, right? But for me, the rain was actually a plus. I mean, sure, I don't like slugging through the rain any more than anybody else, especially when it's cold. But it gave us a chance to test a bunch of stuff, right? And it gave us the opportunity to learn stuff that we hadn't learned on any of our other hikes because it hadn't rained. So after this hike, we knew that my son needed better rain gear. He has an LL Bean rain jacket we borrowed from my daughter. Thought it might be good enough for the trip. It just didn't hold up in the heavy rain. It's a couple of years old. I think the waterproofing is getting a little weaker. Fine for just running out in the car. But, if you're spending 8 hours walking through the forest,
right?
Not so much.
Yeah.
I also discovered my rain gear has gotten loose.
Uh-oh.
So I bought my rain gear a year and a half ago, and I've lost 20 something pounds since then.
Wow.
And so I'm walking along, I'm like, damn it, my freaking pants won't stay up. And it's yeah. So I think I figured it out. They should be fine for the trek. But it's just, happy problem to have, obviously. But I'm right on the cusp, right? They're at the limit of how tight I can make them. So I was stuffing my shirts into it to keep them from falling down. So that was amusing. We discovered we needed waterproof compression sacks for sleeping bags. We just had kind of regular stuff sacky type things for our sleeping bags, which compress down really nice, but it doesn't keep them from getting wet.
Right.
And so I needed that. I knew I needed that. And it had been on my list, but this kind of reaffirmed it. I discovered my sleeping bag is rated down to 20 degrees, but for some reason I'm still just a little cold, so I might get a liner. And I think the biggest thing, so we actually got food that we will be eating at Philmont and brought it on the trek. And so what happens at Philmont is that they give you like these bags of food, and each of them is labeled for the meal you're going to have, like breakfast one, lunch one, dinner one.
Okay. Yeah, I remember when Aaron and I were doing more backpacking and hiking, we would get these full-on meals that were vacuum packed, dehydrated. So we would get like, oh, it's our spaghetti dinner. And, you'd open it up and there'd be like basically powdered sauce and dried noodles, and you'd pour it in. And it worked great. And it tasted really good. But it was, and for backpacking where every ounce of water is, heavy, it was great.
Right.
I don't know. Is
yes.
it anything like that?
Yes.
Or is it more pre-made already?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's a lot more prepared food. So each of these bags will have like, so for example, I'm trying to think what we had for lunch, there was individual slices, sealed slices of spam. Like honest to God spam. A pouch of, because prepared meat, nicely preserved, a pouch of Gatorade to dump into your water bottle, Oreos, I think a Cliff Bar, and so it's a bunch of like really high. It's all high calorie stuff because we're expected to burn something like, I think 3,000 calories a day, like some very large number of calories per day, and they don't want you to lose any weight while you're there. So it's a lot of high calorie, lightweight food. And so there are some instance things. So for dinner we had it was basically like, it's not chicken in a can, but instead chicken in a sealed pouch, right? Plus instant potatoes plus dried vegetables. And so we kind of mixed it all together and made kind of like a poor man's shepherd pie.
Cool.
And so the challenge, I think, for my son and I is that we don't usually eat like this. Like, I don't know that. I mean, I know people love spam, but I don't eat a lot of spam. And so we don't tend to eat a lot of prepared foods aside from like my chicken tender addiction. Chicken tenders and tater tots are the most closest I get to that, right? And so the thing is like it kind of upsets your stomach, right? So like Lucas had some of this while we were on the trail, and like he's like, Dad, my doesn't feel quite so good. So I had some of those Pepto-Bismol tablets. I'm like, here, take 2 of these, just to calm it down. But I'm like, okay, when I got home, I'm like, we need to eat some of this before we go so we can kind of get our systems acclimated to eating food that we're not used to, right? Because I don't know if you've had a Cliff Bar. Like, if you're not used to those things, you eat one and then it kind of like sits in your stomach and you're like, wow.
Yes,
that's heavy.
It's tasty. It's kind of tasty sawdust, if I remember, kind of the sticky, sawdusty sort of texture. But yeah, we would take those to Gen Con as we only have 5 minutes between games and we're super duper hungry. I will have one of these with a lot of water, and hopefully that will get me through.
So now that you mention it, not dissimilar from eating at Gen Con. Right, because you grab on, because you're at Gen Con, you don't want to spend all this time running out. Like, you want to save your money for the big meals when you go out with your friends and what have you, right? And you've only got like 5 minutes between games. So what do? You eat 2 cold Pop-Tarts, slam some Mountain Dew or Gatorade, and like you're on to the next thing. So imagine that, only a lot more calories. And it's better food overall, I guess, but it's still.
Yeah, you don't eat very well at Gen Con during the day. Like for us, I'll go out at night and we'll go to like the Ram or maybe even Weber Grill one night of the week. So there are good food. There is good food to be had, but like during the day when you're going between games, it's junk food usually, and or whatever you happen to put in your bag at the beginning of the day. And usually I try to do pretty good, but it's still Gen Con, so
right. So, it's just like Gen Con, except it's in the middle of the New Mexico desert. Instead of like 50 pounds of D&D books, I'll be carrying 50 pounds of gear.
Right.
And I will be eating a variety of interesting foods.
With
there was that.
Not very good
I also learned
brings.
that my boots weren't nearly broken in enough. Oh, yeah. Well, you bring a trowel.
Right.
And I will leave it to the the listener's attention as to exactly how you're supposed to use said trowel, but I think you guys can figure it out.
Right.
So we do travel from base camp to base camp, and there are some like rural, rustic facilities, but yeah, you gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
But as I was saying, my boots aren't broken in well enough, and so I thought I was beyond this. Quite honestly, I got cocky, is really what it came down to. I've got sock liners. I thought, I'm good, and I was feeling like a little bit of rubbing on the back of my heel, and I'm like, I'm just gonna power through. And I got off the trail, and like got this very lovely blister, and I'm like, oh man, blister, like. A blister? A month before freaking Philcon. That's what you should have. Philcon.
Yep.
Before Philmont. So I'm nursing that and like trying to keep up our training routine. So Lucas and I are going to next we're gonna eat bad food to prepare our stomachs for later, and we're gonna start swimming in the morning. So he volunteered it. He's like, I wanna. Swimming is really good exercise. The only time we can do it is at 6 a.m. before he has school. So we're going to get up at like 5:30 tomorrow morning, go to the Y and swim.
Okay. All right.
So.
Good luck. It's a lot easier.
So speaking of adventures.
Yeah, I was going to say it's a lot easier when your child volunteers to get up that early rather than you having to get them up that early.
Yes, and he is particularly motivated because one of the parts of our trek before we actually go onto the Philmont proper piece is we're going whitewater rafting, and it's serious whitewater rafting, like class 4 rapids and what have you. So he wants to, and one never wants to get out of said raft in these kinds of rapids, right? But obviously, like we haven't been swimming in a year, so he wants to build up his swim strength. So I applaud him.
Yeah.
And that's what we're going to be doing in the morning.
That sounds good.
So, so talking about adventures in the wilderness, you've been working on Dyson Fall?
Yeah. The trials and tribulations of my Sunday game have actually led to some benefit stuff. We had the Dyson Fall game as kind of the secondary game for when we all couldn't get together. And it turns out that we haven't been able to get together for a while. And so I've been able to run Dyson Fall and work on it. I worked on it some during the staycation. And so one of the things that is, part of Dyson Fall is you're kind of growing your community. So I started working on different ideas for the community rules. And since it's based on Mythic D6, the Bastion game that is also based on Mythic D6 does have a set of rules for building up your own company. And so I'm using those as a base and kind of building on those to have you build your own community, and as you adventure, you bring back things to your community, it grows and gives you benefits while you're out on adventuring as well, like both a reputation, but also depending upon your community, it may also bring some disadvantages. Like your community is known for like maybe being a little soft. It's not very well defended. So maybe when people meet you, they'll think you're soft. But also, if it's like they know that it's a rich community, well, maybe they're more inclined to trade with you, or different things like that. It's definitely turning out more like Kipo and the Wonderbeasts than the first or second edition Gamma World, which actually pleases me because first and second edition Gamma World was very much kick down the door, take their stuff, but also characters can die really, really quickly. And so Mythic D6, the D6 system there is characters just don't die easily. And so it's not fitting that sort of aesthetic to it, but it still has the exploration and the wonder that part of Game World that's the part of Game World that I liked, and so that's coming out in this game. So we've been doing some kind of back and forth. I've been tweaking some of the community stuff. We've been really heavily digging into the mutations that people can have and using the Mythic D6 powers rules and trying to figure out how best to do that. We were originally thinking, I was originally thinking, well, I'll just make a whole bunch of powers and you just buy them, and realized that if I want a decent set of powers, that I'd probably spend, several hundred hours just statting out powers. And so it's like, no, I want to let me take my hands off the reins a little bit and give more power to the players and the GMs who are actually going to play it. And so basically it's going to be along the lines of, you have to take these limitations on your powers to fit thematically, but then you guys can make your own powers using the Mythic D6 rules. Since they're already written, they're already there. Just having like the limitation of like signature effect. Like if you have telekinesis, maybe you have antenna coming out of your head that shows that you have a mutation that might be related to your brain. And then the other one is costs hero points to use. So you're not superheroes in Dyson Fall. You have powers that might seem super heroic, but it takes effort to bring them out. And so that's why I have the costs hero points to use, which is one of the mechanics in Mythic D6 that allows you to, add dice or other things like that. It's kind of like fate points in Fate or bennies, things like that. And so it costs that as part of the currency there. Yeah. So what's your next topic there?
Well, back into the wilderness. So I'm this weekend I'm going for training for wilderness first aid training, which is how to treat someone for an injury when you're miles from anywhere. Uh-huh. It's the sort of like practical skills that you hope you will never ever use, and it should be really interesting. It is 9 hours over 2 days that include training, role playing, but sadly no dice. And so, the idea here is that they treat, let's say someone's got a broken leg, like you come. So we'll take a step back. Many, many, many years ago, my wife, who is an avid backpacker, took wilderness first aid training. She actually took more advanced training than what I'll be taking this weekend. And so I got to be a victim. And so because I was the victim, what they did was they dumped me on a countryside, like on a hillside. And before they dumped me, they put makeup on me to indicate the kind of wound that I would have. And then I had to kind of moan a lot on the side of the mountain, and so then they had to come and find me. So I got to moan for about 10 minutes before they so I could actually be found. Because what you then have to do is, as part of the training, they're saying, okay, look, there's a situation. You have to observe the situation. You have to identify if there's any dangers there. Then you have to get a sense for like, what is the current status of this person? Are they non-responsive? Are they conscious? Are they breathing? Do they have a pulse? Like that kind of stuff, right? And so, they wanted to make it as realistic as possible. So they dropped me on the side of a mountain, and then they had to carry me down. So they did a field assessment, then they had to get me on a stretcher. Then 6 people had to like carry me down the side of the hill to get back to the main area, like the center where they were based out of, and then they continued their assessment and what have you, right? And so over time, I had a little script I got to follow. Okay. Right. And so I could give them more clues as things went on, right? But I wasn't allowed to talk at first. Because I think I was suffering from hypothermia. Okay. So they had to warm me up enough to be able to be like more responsive. But so anyway, now I get to do it. And it's a wee bit nerve-wracking, quite honestly. Like, I did my CPR training 1.5 years ago, and CPR is one of the things we're going to have to do this coming weekend. So I'm cramming in a way that I haven't crammed since college, studying for this weekend. I'm going to brush up on some of my other first aid stuff, because it's one of those things like, you cover it, you review it, and like we teach it to the scouts, but I typically haven't been teaching the first aid stuff. There's other people who teach first aid. Mm-hmm. So there's a very excellent chance that I won't pass the first aid test, wilderness first aid test, but that's okay because there's 2 other leaders who are trained in wilderness first aid. Right. And that's how many we need for this particular track. So it's good. I'm looking forward to it. I'm hoping it's going to improve my game, right? Like, you know, when you can bring in these little bits of realism into your game, like, I don't know that you need to actually spend an hour role playing how to set someone's broken ankle. But, you know, I have found that when you do these kinds of real world adventures, right, like, you never know what you're going to be able to bring back to the table.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. Like I've always done that in terms of like my coding. You know, I learn something outside of what I do every day to try and expand stuff. And for Dyson Fall, like reading the calculating stars with the meteorite hit, I brought that into Dyson Fall for the part of the latest adventure. You know, it was and people liked that, where, you know, the shockwave hit the town and flattened some buildings and they had to go rescue people out of the buildings, and fires had started, etc. So bringing those little things into your game is a lot of fun.
Yeah, exactly. So are you going to bring the new battery that you got into your game in some way?
Probably not. I don't know, maybe. The new battery, I'm getting the new battery for the Nissan Leaf. And oh my gosh, it's expensive, but it's not as expensive as a new car. Our Leaf is a 2012 Leaf, so it's 9 years old. It's got 80-ish thousand miles, 90,000 miles, somewhere around there. And it is only got less than half the bars when you fully fill up the battery. And so it only goes about 45 miles before the battery's just kaput. And that's okay, because my wife does not work that close to works that pretty close to where we live. So that's fine. Even in the winter when the battery does not output as much, it's still fine. She can get back and forth. But this is going to be the car for my oldest, who's going to college, and she's going to be commuting to college, which is, you know, about 20-30 miles away ish. And we want her to be able to get there and back without having to charge while she's there. And so we looked into things. Originally, Nissan was saying it was going to be $6,500. That was when we initially bought the car 5 years ago. It's more along the lines of $8,500 to $9,000. We had to do some things financially to afford
That's
that.
one hell of a battery.
It is a big battery. It is expensive, but it is also, like, because of COVID, even used car prices are up there. You know, they're 15-20% more than they normally would be, not only because people want to buy the cars now that restrictions are lifting, they want to go and get a new or newish car and go road tripping or whatever, but also a lot of the rental car places had sold off a lot of their inventory at the beginning of COVID, and now that things are really ramping back up, they're like, we need cars, we need anything. And because of the chip shortage and manufacturing, they can't get new cars, so they're buying used cars.
Wow.
So this is kind of the best option for us. You know, we're still looking to get another car because our other car is even older. It's a 12-year-old Saturn Vue, and so it's seen better days. It still works really well, but it's got some issues, and it's also too big for my oldest to drive. It's one of those things where, and I had forgotten this, was when I first went from a normal size car to like a minivan. When I got that was hard to drive. And yes. I can't imagine getting your license on a car like that, you know, and learning to drive on a car like that is very difficult. And so we want to go ahead and let her have the smaller car, but we definitely still need another car eventually, but we're hoping this will allow us to put that off for that much longer. And hopefully the car prices will come down.
Yeah, we had gotten, I guess in early spring, like Marchish, we got a Chevy Traverse, a used Chevy Traverse, and the car market had been heating up then, right? Like it was already hard. And you know, it was like, and we I think we lucked out. Like we just managed to get it right at the right time. And that thing, to your point, it is huge. Like my daughter gets a little nervous when she's driving it because it's bigger than the Highlander. But we got it because we're just transporting people all over the place. We're going to be taking her to college, right? So we got to haul all of her stuff up. You know, we've got I go backpacking and what have you with my son. And so you need, eventually when the pandemic is over, we need to be able to throw a bunch of scouts and gear in the back of the car and go. So I don't know that it's our long-term car, but it's definitely our right now car. And I'm thankful we were able to get it before before things really heated up. Cause I didn't even think about the rental cars. Jeez.
Yep.
Like it's a tough market.
Yeah. It seems like I'm talking about a lot of technology stuff and you're talking about a lot of outdoor stuff. So tell me about disc golf.
Yeah, I was looking through our show notes. I don't think I've ever talked about disc golf before because I guess I haven't played it in a year. So, but it is a game. So, we're still on gaming. So disc golf is funny, right? It is like golf, but you play it with the equivalent of a flying disc / frisbee. Frisbee, of course, is the trademark. And so I think they get upset if you call it frisbee golf. But in any case, it is disc golf. And it is not, in fact, frisbee golf, because just like in regular golf, you have a driver and you have a medium range disc and you have a putter disc. And so there's 3 different kinds of discs with 3 different kinds of flight properties. And this is way more than I knew about disc golf when I started like 2015. So originally my friends and I were working on this massive web redesign project for the college I was working at. And we were just stressed out because we were putting in, like, we don't normally put in super crazy long hours, but it was one of those things like we wanted to hit our July deadline. We needed to launch at the end of the month. And we were doing like the 60-hour, 80-hour a week thing. Like we're putting in the time that we need to get it done. And even when we weren't putting in particularly long hours, it was just stressful. Like we were working on that project continuously every day. You just come into the war room and like recode. And so we needed a break. And so we're like, hey, disc golf. What's disc golf? Well, let's go try it. It's basically just throwing discs in the woods. And so it was very relaxing. And it's basically, just a couple of guys going in the woods. And so the idea is just like in regular golf. So we have these drivers and putters and whatever that I was describing. They're different discs with different flight properties. And you throw them at a basket. And that basket, just like in regular golf, with its holes, is a certain distance away, measured in like yards or feet, right? And so you try to get to the basket within a certain number of throws. Just like in golf, it's it's like a par 3 or a par 5 where you try to get it in that many attempts. We are very bad at this, and we haven't gotten better. But it's like a good walk in the woods, right? So you get together with your friends. We'll get together at like 7:30 in the morning or 8 o'clock in the morning before it gets too hot, and then we'll just go out and kind of walk the course and have a good time, like just chit-chatting, laughing at each other when someone nearly gets hit by a disc. We have lost many a disc because, you're throwing a disc into the woods. And again, we're not very good at this. So with the pandemic, we stopped playing it because, especially like in the early days of the pandemic, right? Like nobody wanted to be in close proximity to anybody else, social distancing and what have you. And even though it's a walk in the woods, we were being super, super cautious. But now we're on the other side, hopefully, fingers crossed, of the pandemic. Everybody's vaccinated or soon will be. And so I think we're bringing it back. I need to talk to my friends. I think it might be a thing for me. It might have to wait until after we get back from Philmont, but I'm hoping that we can get the gang back together because it turns out, and I had no idea before this, but the Lehigh Valley is like one of the premier places for disc golf.
Wow. Like
people come here from other areas to play disc golf because we have really good disc golf courses. So we actually have a disc golf course that's like right down the road at our city park. There's another one in South Mountain in Bethlehem. And then there's like the Pebble Beach of disc golf courses at Lake Knockemixon in Bucks County. It's just like, It's got like water hazards. It's beautiful. Like, I don't know how well it's been maintained during the pandemic, but it is a beautiful, beautiful course. And so I'm hoping we're going to get back to it because it was super relaxing and I miss it, even if I am, as I say, really bad at it.
Yeah, I know that there is a disc golf course near me, but I have yet to be able to find it. I've been kind of interested occasionally. Some friends of mine, Wesley and Bob, they play and used to talk about it on their podcast, which is they've since shuttered. But it was like I started looking into it, but there's one near me theoretically, but like I said, I haven't been able to find it. I did know of one close to where I used to live in Munster, Indiana, but I don't want to drive 2+ hours to go there. And I don't even know if it's still there. They put it in back when I was in high school, actually. And I used a regular Frisbee. Wow. not the specialized ones. I don't know. I kind of don't know. Did disc golf come out and then the putter driver medium range discs come out, or did it all come out kind of all at once? I really don't know.
Yeah, I don't know the prehistory of it. I think I suspect it evolved over time. I suspect people started it with a more traditional generic flying disc, and it evolved into more specialized tools over time.
Right.
I mean, I got to say, like, when you watch people who know what they're doing play disc golf, it's really freaking impressive, right? Like, they have great control. They know how to throw it. They've got these fantastic moves, and you're like, wow, that's really, really cool. I cannot do that.
Yeah.
And so we just kind of laugh.
Yeah, it was. I have a feeling that I'll be like that, or that we'll have a peanut style kite eating tree, but for for disc golf discs on our course, or at least for me. If I start playing, at least initially, it sounds cool. I want to play, and it just sounds like a nice, relaxing walk and exercise at the same time. But yeah, like I said, I haven't found mine yet. Maybe I'll have to come out there and actually play, but it's a bit far.
Yeah. So speaking of like relaxing activities, more woodworking.
Yep. The staycation. I didn't turn anything on the staycation, but I did a little bit before then. I finished 3 pens for our friend Natalie, who did our logo. And finally got them shipped out to her, and she likes them, which is good. And then I turned some seam rippers, one for my mom and one for my aunt. They're used to cut the seams out of, like, to either repair a garment, or like if maybe something in the sewing machine wandered or whatever, and they have to take it out, or if they're altering something where they're taking something in or letting something out. It's a very convenient tool to cut those threads to open that seam up. And so there were some kits there for that. And I've just been really enjoying doing that. It is a relaxing pastime, because I have to be aware of what I'm doing, but I don't have to really think too hard about like how to do it or what is my method. I just have to be paying attention so I don't hurt myself. But other than that, I can just kind of concentrate on, well, what kind of shape do I want? What kind of, do I have to be more aggressive on cutting this thing or not? But it's a very soothing sort of rhythm that I can get into, and it's been a lot of fun. I did start on another woodworking project outside of turning, which was our silverware drawer. Is probably, like most people's, has a plastic insert in the drawer, which doesn't fit the drawer at all. So it kind of slides around in there, and it's just a mess. And so I'm going to be replacing that with a custom wood insert so that it fits the entire drawer and it won't slide around, but it also has custom sized areas to fit the things that we have, like a nice square area that will fit the round pizza cutters that we have, or a little area for the chopsticks that we have, so that things just aren't just thrown in there so it looks like a junk drawer. So that is my current project that I'm working on. Part of the woodworking side of things was also dealing with that polycarbonate that I did the D20 that I talked about earlier. They come in square sheets or rectangular sheets. I wanted it to be round, so I made it, used my palm router to make it a round disc, so that it's more dice-like when it was done. It was a lot of fun. So you do have a little bit of gaming in here.
I do. The Mass Effect Legendary Edition finally came out. It came out in May of 2021, and it includes the remastered versions of all 3 of the Mass Effect games, all of the DLC. It does not, unfortunately, come with online multiplayer, which I really enjoyed the multiplayer for Mass Effect, but for a variety of technical reasons, it was just not going to happen. But it looks beautiful. I mean, I'm only running it on a PS4. I can imagine that it would be even better on a PS5. But it's beautiful. Everything's been upgraded. It tends to meander a bit. Like, it's funny, right? Like, it's an old school BioWare role-playing game. So You're going and talking to all the NPCs. There's a lot of great action in it, but awesome world building. But you're going to spend a lot of time walking.
Right.
And so, I've been enjoying it. The downside to it is, although it comes with all this great stuff, it does not actually come with any time to play it. Right. So I am struggling to pick up some time here and there, like, half an hour. And it's a Mass Effect game, so you can't necessarily just pick it up, play it for half an hour and go. You really need to kind of commit to an hour of it, which is kind of hard to find right now. The single biggest challenge I had with the game was getting my Shepherd back. Right. So there's my character that I played for all those years. And I thought about just creating a wholly new one. And then I started doing it. I'm like, no, this feels weird. I need to get my Shepherd back. And so, you're sitting there and I start playing like the character controls are great. And so you're going in and modifying and what have you, and start playing the game like, no, that's not right. I need to do it again. So I went through like 3 restarts before I got my Shepherd.
Wow.
Good to go. Shepherd being the main character, if it wasn't obvious. But I'm excited. The other thing that's challenging is that I do have like a lot of muscle memory associated with Mass Effect because I did play all 3 games originally. But the problem is it's now all like they changed the mechanics from game to game to game. And so originally, I don't know what I'm remembering, but it's definitely not Mass Effect 1. I standardized some of it with the remastering.
Yeah.
But
yeah, I wonder if they went to a standard control scheme for all 3. So it would make sense because they remastered everything. I looked at
that's
that.
My understanding. Like they did to some extent.
Yeah, and I looked at that. I was gonna pick it up, but then my logical brain went, "Hey, you don't have time for this," and you bought like Fallout 76 from the hype, and we know how that turned out. So why don't you wait for a little bit to find out if it actually is good and when you actually have time to play. So I do intend on picking it up. If I hear that it's pretty good. Oh, I also, bought what was it? Cyberpunk 2077, so not as bad as Fallout 76 in my book, even with the glitches, but still had some glitches. And, it was once again one of those things of buy it after it comes out to make sure that everything's all good. I haven't heard anything bad about it, so it sounds like it's a good Mass Effect game, because that's what it is Mass Effect. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, if you like Mass Effect, then you will enjoy Mass Effect Legendary Edition because it is more Mass Effect with less time spent waiting in elevators.
Got it.
Because in the original Mass Effect, you spent way too much time in elevators. Got it. Right? Because that's how they cover the load screens, right? And the funny thing is there's like dialogue that happens, like plot related dialogue that happens in the elevators that you can miss if you just skip all the elevator scenes. But the good news is you can actually skip all of the elevator scenes. So yes, I was not as wise as you. Honestly, like getting it now is somewhat irrational because I just don't have time to play it. And but that's okay. The nostalgia I felt the first time that it powered up and like the Mass Effect theme came on, I was like, it just hit me right in the chest, and that was worth it. Like that 2 minutes of loading and the initial music was like, oh, this is gonna be good. So I do enjoy it. I recommend it for folks who enjoy Mass Effect, and it's a nice palate cleanser after a Mass Effect Andromeda, which was, well, not very good.
That is what I've heard. I was almost like, I have actually never played. I started playing Mass Effect 1 years and years ago, and then just didn't have the time to actually play it. So it was one of those things that I've never actually played any of the series. I almost got Mass Effect Andromeda, but I waited until it came out and then saw the reviews and I was like, maybe I can skip this one. But I do want to play it. Right now I've got a couple of games in the queue before it, which is another reason I didn't feel the need to pick it up yet. I've got Subnautica Below Zero, which I'm having fun with. And then after that, I've got Alien Isolation, which was a free game for a while in the Epic Store, but I've heard good things about it. It's very creepy, sneak horror type stuff.
Yes. It's supposed to be. I haven't played it, but I heard it's gotten very good reviews.
Yep. So I think that's it for us today. Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you have feedback, we definitely love feedback. You can send it to us at podcast@layerofsecrets.com, or you can send us a tweet on Twitter @layerofsecrets. And you can also visit layerofsecrets.com and leave us feedback, topic ideas, your own thoughts about what we've talked about in the comment sections there. Thanks, everyone.